Thank you very much. Welcome to CivicCon. Thrilled everyone can be here. My name's Quinn Studer, and I'm with the Studer Community Institute, and it's wonderful to partner this with Pensacola News Journal. When we started this, in October, we didn't really know what to expect. The Studer Community Institute, we've done a poll of our elected officials at the county, city, ECOA, and asked them about training and development. And then it hit us, maybe it'd be better to bring training and development here. Because if one person goes off or two people go off, it's really hard to bring it back home. So we got together and said, well, what if we just bring the who's who of urban planning and development, other things into Pensacola? How neat would that be? And Christian Wagley, who's here somewhere, Christian, we asked him, because he's so close to this, to find the best of the best. And we have brought them in, and we're excited about tonight. We're excited about the rest of the series. Around the fall, we'll be kicking off the Center for Civic Engagement. And that'll be at the Studer Community Institute building. That's another partnership between us and the Pensacola News Journal. And we'll probably kick it off with Bob Graham. Senator Graham's probably going to come in and kick it off on building civic engagement in the community. Our focuses will be on neighborhood associations. Because if you remember Emily Talon, she said every neighborhood should have the same access to the good stuff, and every neighborhood should have the same access to the bad stuff, in a way. And we notice where there's strong neighborhood associations, they seem to do better where there's not strong neighborhood associations. Now, that's not perfect, but it sort of goes like that. So that's one of our big pushes with the Center for Civic Engagement. The other big push will be to make sure that we help people say, how can you be an advocate? How to go across the right way to make sure that you get heard or you get heard by the elected officials and so on. Because it shouldn't be hard. It should be easy to get public records. It should be easy to get an appointment. It should make sense to get a return phone call. So we're going to make sure we do those things. And we're also, in a recent poll that I did, found out that many people want public access to more records, like who showed up for votes, who voted, what their meeting attendance was. So that's all coming too. We're very, very excited about the Center for Civic Engagement. We'll also be continuing the CivicCon series. So if you know of a speaker, if you know of somebody you've heard, we sent 4 people to Savannah, or really more than that, 5 altogether, and then Christian went on his own for 6. If you heard a speaker, somebody you really think is good, let us know. Next month's speaker, Andrew Davis, was somebody who went to a conference and said he was like the best speaker they had heard. We should try to get him, so he'll be actually here next month. Now, all our speakers have been great, but if you hear a speaker, just give us the name. Now, one thing you say often on the survey is you wonder about elected official attendance. So I've gotten to the point of always asking them to recognize themselves. Now, because I have asked people to stand, but not everybody can stand, so let's start out by welcoming David Mayo here, who's one of our mayoral candidates. So the other candidates that do have the capability, if you would stand up, and we recognize, I just found that out in New York. I was in New York at a thing, David, and they said for those, that's how they handled it. So I learned how to handle that. So thank you. So those who stand up, if you're running for office or in office, stand right up. Give a nice round of applause. There we go. Thank you. Nice to have you back from Paris, Brian. Okay. So let's see what else we got here. CivicCon, we had Marv Sapella. In fact, I'll be with Marv Thursday and Friday up in Hazleton at Betty Ford at a board meeting. Again, he was a 9.75 speaker. What we really liked about Marv is he also brought in different people that normally hadn't come to CivicCon. So when we're looking at our 2019 speakers, we're going to look at a variety of different topics, and we're actually right now working on categories. And we're going to send that out to you. Probably this week, you'll get a survey talking about categories that you might want to look at, whether it's environmental, whether it's traffic, whether it's small business development. And we're going to ask you to weigh in on what you think of some of these categories that we think are really, really important. And then we'll start looking for various speakers to fill in the different categories. But certainly Marvin, he enjoyed being here very, very much, had a great time. You can see he was quite the hit. I thought it was great in the Pensacola News Journal to read about the physician at Andrews Institute with the opiates and that. And speaking of the Pensacola News Journal, I think Kevin Robinson, I keep waiting for him to win the Pulitzer, but where's Kevin? Is he here? Tim Monahan, Tim coming right from He's not as quite, we hired this new broadcaster, for the Pensacola Blue Wahoos last week. We gave him a 5-year contract, John Appleyard. We think he's a rising star here in the community. Upcoming speakers, Andrew Davis. He was basically a former NBC, MTV producer. Topic, marketing your community. How to manage it up. In my book, Building a Vibrant Community, and I hope you buy a copy, every single dollar goes to early brain development. And just give you a couple things on that. Only 47% of our children in Escambia County are now ready for kindergarten. It used to be 66. It's now down to 47. Out of the 17 largest counties in Florida, we're the worst in kids being ready for kindergarten. Now, if a child's not ready for kindergarten, there's a great chance they won't graduate from school. The average male who doesn't graduate from school 60% end up in prison at some time in their life. A female that doesn't graduate from high school will probably 70% chance she'll have a baby by the time she's 18. So we've been treating symptoms in this area for a long time. It's time to treat the root cause, which is getting that baby's brain built from the first 3 years. Let me give you the results of our first year with the 3 hospitals. As you know, every new mother now at any of the 3 hospitals gets a tutorial on how to build her child's brain. Then after the tutorial, they fill out a survey. And it says, how knowledgeable were you in building your child's brain before this tutorial? And the average score is a 6.5. Then we say, now that you've had this, how knowledgeable are you in building your child's brain? And the score is a 9.5. So we're making great progress. But remember, this is not funded by any government. It's funded completely local. So if you buy a book, the entire dollar amount goes to building a brain. So every book that is sold, all the dollars come here. And that means for every book sold, you're changing one child's life. So I'm not afraid to push the book at all because I think it all goes for a good cause. And I think you'll like the book. It's gotten good reviews. And if you can only read one chapter, read chapter 2. That's the Pensacola story. Empowering Neighbors contest, neighborhoods, remember that's still going on. You have till July 13th to turn in your ideas for your neighborhood. I've talked to some of you today, and you're here because you're in the contest, and we're excited about that. So let me introduce Joe Minicozzi. Joe, in my book, I talked about Pat Whalen. When I went to Asheville, in fact, I think, Brian, you were on one of our trips to Asheville. It was me, I think Mort O'Sullivan went, Rishi went, Randy Hammer hosted us because he wanted us to see Asheville. And when we went, I was so depressed because Asheville was so vibrant. And coming back to Pensacola in 2005, I wouldn't use the term vibrant. Maybe if you were into other things vibrant, but it was just, I wouldn't consider it vibrant. And I was almost depressed because we'll never be like that. And luckily, Pat Whalen and some other people gave us a sort of a picturesque view of what it was like. One of those movers and shakers was Joe Minicozzi. And then he left there and he started Urban3, which goes around the country, sort of with Chuck Marone. They do a lot of things together, talking about how to figure out, just looking at numbers, what your city's worth, what your county's worth, and what you might look upon investing in. So help me introduce Joe Minicozzi to the
So thanks for having me. This is going to be a lot of fun. I'm going to try to shoot for higher than a 9.75. So if y'all could, I'm going to lobby you right now. So who's all been to Asheville before? Oh wow, crazy. All right, so I'm going to go through a little story about Asheville. Who's seen me present before? Maybe just a couple people? Okay, Randy, you can't shout out the answers. Me neither. So when I talk to people about cities, I try to find ways to connect. How can you look at this city, or how could you put it in a place and time? And I speak to numerous places all across the country, and the easiest way that I could frame it is think about a city as a timeline. Pensacola has a DNA. It started in a certain path, it's going on a certain path, much in the way that I have a DNA. So this is how I started my life when I had some hair and I was 3 months old. This is my trajectory, right? I'm going to be Papa, whether I like it or not. You all do this, right? Or more importantly, I'm going to be this guy, again when I had hair. But you can see from my name, I'm Italian. There's a lot I can't change about that. I like to eat a lot of food. I'm 100% Italian. But we also have a genetic predisposition to heart disease in my family. It was no surprise when my dad had a 7 bypass heart surgery. What do you call that, a septuple? You know, so that's in me, right? So what do I do with that information? I eat right, I exercise, I lower my blood pressure, all of those things that I have to do to grow smartly into the future, right? So in your mind, where's Pensacola 100 years from now? Who's your grandfather? Who's your grandmother? Are you learning from Jacksonville? Are you learning from New Orleans? Who's your model? Where are you going? If you don't have that in your head, if you don't have a place of where you're going, you don't know what things to avoid. Like I have to cut down on saturated fats, right? I'll eat a cheeseburger, but I'll exercise after that, or maybe eat a salad, right? As you go through this model of thinking who you are, what is it you want to be? Are you consciously looking at other places? So, you know, I have to thank you for bringing other ideas into this place. And you all have, this is your task as citizens. This is a civic exercise. The other thing I want to do is give you a quick little test. So for those of you that have seen this before, don't shut out the answers. But I'm going to give you 5 seconds to tell me how many shapes you see in this kid's puzzle. It's a really simple elementary school test. So tell me how many shapes you see. Ready, go. All right. How many shapes did you all see? Anybody want to go higher than 20? I think was the highest. Anybody want to go higher than 20? 21. Anybody higher than 21? What was the lowest? Was it like 8? 7. Anybody want to go lower than 7 or higher than 21? It's your last chance. Probably. That's not close enough. All right, well, what time was it on the clock? Anyone? How many kids were on the school bus? 7. So you didn't see those things, sorry, because I didn't ask you the question. Daniel Kahneman's a Nobel Prize-winning behavioral economist, and he talks about in the book Fast and Slow the modalities of how our brains operate. You've got 2 modes of thinking. You've got a fast mode and a slow mode. By asking you a question, I put you in a fast mode. I made you in your automatic response. You started counting shapes, right? You didn't see the kids on the bus. You didn't see the time on the clock because I didn't ask you that question. We are painfully good at answering questions without looking at all of the data, right? All this stuff that I'm going to do from here going forward is just information that's hiding in plain sight. We're just not asking the right question. We don't ask the right questions. And for those of you running for council or that are counselors, how many times do you sit at council meetings and think about, can I please get this meeting over? This is way too much information. We ask the wrong questions. That's the wrong place to make those decisions. So let's talk about cities. Asheville, y'all have been there. You know where it is. Beautiful setting, Blue Ridge Mountains, bluegrass music, beer. We're 90,000 people. We have about 40 breweries now. It's about 5,000 people per brewery if you're doing the math there. And like any quirky little mountain town, we have men dressed as nuns on tall bikes that eat fire. It's your typical little place. Well, it didn't start that way. This is a shot down Main Street. Y'all have stood there that have been here. 15 years after this picture was taken, this is what it became. We like to say that 3 T's made Asheville: trains, tourism, and tuberculosis. That once the train lines came to Asheville, it brought a flood of tourists, and it completely changed our city. The city exploded in the 1920s. We had the second streetcar line in the entire country. The only city that had a streetcar line before us was Richmond. We had president's visit. We still have presidents, so probably not going to get this current president, but we had Obama. During the 1920s, we grew by 20% in population every single year of the decade, which is ridiculous growth. Asheville was the second largest city in North Carolina by the end of the 1920s. Did y'all know that? We were bigger than Charlotte, Raleigh, Durham. In that process, we achieved the highest debt per capita in the entire United States. We were number 1 in debt. And when the Depression hit and our books were audited, we thought we had $5 million in the bank. It turned out we had $18,000 in the bank. A little clerical error there. Our entire city council was indicted and the mayor committed suicide. That's how Asheville entered the Depression. We call that leadership. Thomas Wolfe, famous American author, wrote the book Look Homeward Angel. This is what he had to say about Asheville. He wrote this in the book. Asheville has squandered fabulous sums. They've flung away the earnings of a lifetime. They have mortgaged those of a generation to come. They have ruined a city. And in doing so, they've ruined themselves, their children, and their children's children. That's a hell of a thing to say about your hometown, right? I mean, Quentin, would you write that in a book? I wrote it in a book. Incidentally, He was told never to come home again. He was threatened. His family was threatened. His second book was called You Can't Go Home Again, for obvious reasons. Seriously, I'm not making it up. In a way, he was right. It's not that he was clairvoyant. He would nail what would become of Asheville. It would take us until 1976 to pay off that debt. This is the Asheville Citizen-Times. Here it is, 1976. Here's three guys burning the last bond with Miss Asheville with their tiara. This is Billy Graham. It's a big deal when Billy shows up. But check this out. It's the third headline in the paper that day, below the fold. Behind abortions and somebody died in a prison fire. That's not even our county. That's the next county over. That's the disgrace that we had about our own community. But when we got out of debt, what did we do? We started doing what everybody else did. We want to keep up with the Joneses. We want to modernize. We cut a highway through the north side of downtown, which became the Crosstown Expressway. And the coup de grace was blowing the mountain open in Bowcatcher Cut. I love this on a postcard. Isn't this awesome? Why don't y'all come and visit our cut? You know, what's interesting is the community actually fought DOT and proved that it was cheaper to do a tunnel, but they lost because DOT didn't have the technology to do a tunnel, even though some lost civilization of humanoids left us a tunnel right there. I mean, that didn't transfer. On the other side of the cut, the mall happened, and guess what happened when the mall came in? Downtown died. So for those of you that have visited Asheville, this is the Asheville a lot of people remember. This isn't from the 80s. We're too poor to do anything. We were too far in debt to take part of urban renewal and start to do these silver bullet projects. We just boarded everything up and just walked away from it. That's a 1996 Chevy Celebrity right there. That's not too long ago, folks. Why don't you all move to Asheville and put a little elbow grease into this thing, right? It's a little fixer-upper. So like a Greek choir, anytime somebody tried to step up in the community and try to help downtown, they were met by the community, by the great choir of people. That'll never work here, don't even try. That's not who we are. We're not city people. We're not Charleston. We're not New Orleans. Y'all got people like this? Every community I go to has the naysayers. But there's a reality of what cities are. For tens of thousands of years, we've built places called downtowns. So Julian Price started Public Interest Projects. This is the group that Quinn came to meet with. Julian inherited a tremendous sum of money. He put $15 million into a for-profit real estate development company. 75% of the money went into sticks and bricks, getting buildings fixed up, and we reserved 25% to seed businesses. So we needed to have entertainment, things on the ground floor for people to come and visit. I worked with Public Interest Projects for about 5 years. I'm still in their office, but we started a new company called Urban3. So this is one of our buildings before and after. Banks wouldn't finance it. Banks said nobody would live downtown because there was nobody downtown at the time. These are 400 to 500 square foot apartments. Let me ask you a question. Who in this room would live in a 400 to 500 square foot apartment? Yeah, about 10 people? Let me change the question. Who in this room has lived in a 400 to 500 square foot apartment? That's our marketing survey. Sometimes we tend to make decisions based on where we are in life and without ever being conscious of what we're actually working with, which is a community full of people with a diversity of ideas, opinions, attitudes, and everything else. And we make decisions by, oh, I wouldn't live in a 400 square foot apartment. So for those of you running for office or leading in this community, ponder that. How are we getting more community involvement and more decisions for more diversity in our community? So the other thing Julian did was a constant, if he was around today, he died in 2001, if he was around today, he'd probably be a blogger, but back then he had his own little magazine. This is what Asheville looked like, just boarded up buildings. And he would bring information to the community. This is a quote from Arthur Frommer. Among cities with no particular recreation appeal, those that have preserved their past continue to enjoy tourism. Those that haven't receive almost no tourism at all. Tourism simply doesn't go to a city that's lost its soul. In a way, you can hear Thomas Wolfe coming back, right? Just this person criticizing their community. 15 years, that's from Arthur Frommer, by the way. 15 years later, Frommer's magazine would list Asheville as the number 5 place to visit. 2 years ago or 3 years ago, we got listed number 1. I mean, it's kind of, living in Asheville, it's kind of a little silly now, how many top lists we are on. But this is, again, how we make place. But that's all great, Joe. This is a good story, but what does it really mean? What's the data behind this? So to look at downtown as a portfolio, so Public Interest Projects is a $15 million investor sitting inside a portfolio of properties. This is what downtown was worth back in 1991 when Public Interest Projects got started. Downtown was a $100 million asset, right? As a portfolio of buildings in our community, that's what it was worth. just by fixing up buildings, and we weren't the only one, there was numerous developers that were doing this. Just by fixing up buildings, we didn't get a new building in downtown until 2008. So that value of $500 million was sitting there, hiding in the community. Now to show you that it's not all love and roses, everybody comes to Asheville and is like, this is so wonderful, it's so easy here, right? These are campaign ads from the 1990s when the city actually took the leadership in helping the entrepreneurs get started. The city did streetscape projects, parking garages. They tried to find ways to look at parking in aggregate in the community. You know, God forbid, they put meters on the street. Ooh, kind of think that's surprising you still don't have them here yet, but I guess that's maybe a conversation to talk about later. But check this out. Parking garages, streetscape projects, yellow walk down Wall Street. This is Chris Peterson complaining about $26 million of public investment into the downtown. Now, I don't have $26 million in my pocket. That's a lot of money, right? Downtown development for bureaucrats instead of water, sewer, streets for our citizens. So, okay, Chris has an opinion. Let's do some math. $26 million. If you invest $26 million on a $100 million asset, and it grows to $500 million, is investing 26 and yielding $430 million, is that a good return on investment? Yes. Why the hell do we listen to Chris? And you're not going to stop Chris. I mean, he's got a website now. I love this. It's all fire and brimstone. He misspelled charlatans, by the way. But I asked the mayor, I'm like, is that a liquor drink? She goes, it should be. People are entitled to their opinions. They're not entitled to their own facts. So what's the facts of what's going on with this information? Can you bring the data forward and understand what your city is? So it kind of reminds me of actually what this thing's all about. It's just civics, right? This is a kid's book from a teacher's guide. I found this in a garage sale on over in West Palm Beach. So teacher's guide, city, town, and country, right? Teacher's guide, 1959. This is a third grade textbook. In kindergarten, you learn about your house. First grade, the school. Second grade, the neighborhood. Third grade, you learn about regional planning. The front half of the book is a teacher's guide. So it tells you, the teacher, how to deal with these third graders. And it says this: while patterns vary from state to state, counties are usually responsible for education, library, health, welfare, etc. In studying the functions performed by your county, you will no doubt find there is a duplication of services and overlapping of jurisdictions and a lack of coordination between the county and local communities within it. Do you have that problem? So here's the book. It's one of those Dick and Jane kind of styled books. It's painfully white. It's also misogynistic. The girls are shoved out in the hallway for some reason. But you read about a new factory comes to town. There's even more kids that move to school. So you ask in blue here, you can't really read it, but in blue you ask your third graders this question. Give 4 good reasons for building a new school. You ask third graders about infrastructure, right? What do the third graders talk about? Equity. Everybody should have a desk. Maybe we should split the class in 2, get another teacher, right? Third graders are making a decision. You go on and read over here, Mr. Canfield lived next door to the Allens. He didn't want to build a new school. He says our taxes are too high now. If we build a new school, we'll need more teachers and everything else. We'll have to pay for that and pay higher taxes. That is indeed true. When you buy more stuff, it costs more money. So you ask your third graders, why would some people have to pay higher taxes if a new school were built? Third graders have a civic conversation about need and payment. I know adults that can't have this conversation anymore. This is the broader need for a civic conversation. We've lost this ability to have a third grade conversation. But my favorite part is this. Remember, too, that many children, whether urban and rural and regardless of region, are tragically limited in their knowledge of their world, and their world's largely the space in which they live and operate. We are all tragically limited in our knowledge of the world. For those folks that are actually on commission, you see this at every meeting. Somebody comes in, is the mayor in here? Like, I need a parking space downtown. It's the mayor's fault. I need a parking space. So now the whole community has to stop and find Joe a parking space. This is how we've allowed our civics to decay without understanding what we're all into here. Is this depressing? You guys all right? What we've learned or unlearned is what are cities. This is straight from Oxford Dictionary. Incorporate. To constitute a company, a city, or other organization as a legal corporation. There's very little difference between our real estate development company and our city, other than the fact that the city elects a board of directors. They're both corporations. So is our county, so is our state, so is our country. Asheville is $13 billion in taxable value. So if Asheville were a corporation, it'd be 6 times the value of Ted Turner. What's your corporation worth? What's your city worth? Do y'all know? No? So y'all are share with that?
I don't. Anyone else know?
We'll get back to it. I know what it is. So it's not just, I'll keep you in suspense. Stephen Colbert's show, Joe Biden was on it, and he said this: the United States is the largest corporation in the world. I'm such a nerd, I went and looked it up. If anybody wants the U.S. code, there it is. We are a federal corporation. Now, I'm not saying it's capitalistic, because it's not about winning. It's about operating together as a collective corporation. We're all in it together. So my city is a finite boundary of land that has to be managed. If y'all have one, I'm sure everywhere I go, everybody's like, you don't understand our state legislature. Our state legislature in Asheville took away our airport without paying us for it. Then they took our water system without paying for it. What was kind of phenomenal is they made eminent domain illegal, and then they went ahead and took all of our stuff without paying us for it, and we're like, yeah, that's kind of inconsistent. And then when we complained about it, our state legislator called us a cesspool of sin, which was super awesome. I was on the Downtown Association board, and we had a board meeting, and we're like, did he really mean it? And then we sent a reporter to go talk to him. The second comment was, well, it's not the county. There's some good people in Buncombe County. It's just that downtown part. That's the cesspool of freaks and weirdos. So we threw a beer party in the street. I mean, what can you do with that? So there's, if we have a finite boundary land, incidentally, Asheville is the only city in North Carolina that is not allowed to annex land until December 26, 2026. Only city. Just wrote it right into their charter. Isn't that awesome? Have fun in Raleigh. Go talk to them. So, okay, if that's all we have is a finite boundary of land. Now, this is true in most places. It's true of your county. Escambia County can't go annex the next county over, right? So the land that you have is all that you have in that corporation. So it has a function of productivity. So think when you talk to farmers are always talking in economic terms. What's the crop yield per acre, water per acre, all that stuff, right? So this is the streetscape project that the city gave us. This is one of our buildings, retail, office, residential. So thank you, city. Thank you for the garbage can, the bike rack, 2 benches, and a street tree. We didn't pay for that. That's a subsidy at our front door, right? Everybody, the whole world can walk on it, but Chris Peterson thinks it's our subsidy. Fair enough. We didn't pay for it. We took the tax value from $300,000 to $11 million. So the taxes on that property shot up 3,500%. That's money you get. Anybody in this room have a 401k plan that grows by 3,500%? 500% more garbage cans. I don't care. And people are like, well, Joe, come on, man. That's cute and everything. That's $11 million. We've got this Walmart that's $20 million. That Walmart pays $200,000 in property taxes. Tremendous sum. This is my house. Those are my dogs. My dogs think they're lions, by the way. But I'm on 1/10 of an acre. You do that to freak my neighbors out. They'll sit there for hours. It's kind of fun. So we're on 1/10 of an acre. We pay $2,000 in taxes. So if a 1 acre cookie cutter fell from space in my neighborhood, it's going to grab 10 houses, each paying $2,000 or about $20,000 an acre. That's the productivity of my neighborhood. Do y'all follow me? Take that 1 acre cookie cutter, fly it in space, drop it on the Walmart, divide its tax bill by the 34 acres of my corporation that is consumed. This is per acre yield. If you had an acre of our building downtown, this is what you get. Okay, you win a popularity contest. You're managing the city of Asheville. What kind of cash flow would you want to have? I was presenting this in Colorado. I was like, let me make it real easy for you people in Colorado. If you could grow a crop, what are you going to grow? I know this works in Florida now. Cash crop. And some people tell me, like, Joe, yeah, that's fine, that's cute, that's property taxes. We take the losses in property taxes to take the gains in retail taxes. All right, let's run the numbers. I don't sell anything in my house. So the Walmart sells about $77 million worth of stuff. The city gets a portion of that. 8 cents on the sales tax dollar, 27% of that comes back to my city, or about $47,500. Add that to the property taxes. The total nut is $51,000 an acre, retail plus property taxes. That's just our property taxes per acre. Now remember I told you, we sell stuff down here. Let's add our retail taxes. Now you're cooking with gas. Jobs. How do you want to look at it? When you stack it up side by side, we even have 90 units of residential per acre versus there's 0. You get more stuff with this because we've been doing that for tens of thousands of years because it makes economic sense. Are you running the numbers? Do you know what kind of flow you get? Some people say to me like, Joe, look, that's fine. Why do you hate Walmart, man? And you're missing the point. I'm using Walmart as a paradigm, as a big box. But since we're talking about it, I presented at the International Association of Tax Assessing Officers Conference. Is there a tax assessor in the room? Has anybody ever hung out with 3,000 tax assessors? It makes a planning conference feel like Burning Man by comparison. It's the squarest conference. These people are mathletes. I'm not, to sit and have discussions over a drink over standard deviation models and regression analysis. This kind of blows my mind. But anyway, this guy presented at the International Association of Assessing Officers Conference. He was the keynote speaker at 8 in the morning. Mr. Terrell presented spreadsheet after spreadsheet on how cheap his buildings are. I'm in the back of the room thinking this is awesome. 3,000 assessors. This guy's getting his property tax bills lowered for 3,000 communities in one presentation. That's efficient. Now, the architect inside of me was collapsing because I'm like, how is he getting away with this? Now, assessors are agnostic. If it's a cheap building, it's a cheap building. They can't make value. So they're like, thank you for making our jobs easier. So I went up to the microphone and I asked him, I said, Mr. Terrell, what's the useful life of one of your buildings? And he immediately barked back, 15 years. We'll be out of that building in 15 years, maybe 20. We designed that building to depreciate as quick as possible so we can maximize it to capture on the depreciation. The buildings are insignificant for us. It's more about the distribution system. We don't care about the buildings. Your corporation. Is that a good investment in your corporation? Is 15 years of a commitment in your corporation a good turn for you? It's about the life cycle of a cat. We at least mourn the passing of a cat when the cat goes. We mourn the passing of a Walmart? No. And then the property taxes drop even lower. Y'all have to pay for that street. That's the city side. Now, again, I mentioned, is this okay? Is this too nerdy for you guys? Is this all right? I'm aiming for a 10, so I got to work on this one. This is our brothers and sisters out in the county and what they pay in county taxes versus us in the city. So the city resident actually produces more county taxes than the folks out in the county. I have a lot of people out in an unincorporated county, 2 voters out there for every 1 voter in the city. So rather than hate on us and call us a cesspool, how about a thank you card for all the money we're shoveling your way? Maybe a box of chocolates. How about a beer? Here's the mall. You see why elected officials would go after commercial versus residential, right? Here's the mall. Let's not stop there. There's our building downtown. Here's the mall. So we find with downtown that what's good for downtown is great for the city, but it's unbelievable for the county. How many kids are in that building going to school? 0. What did the county pay for that sidewalk? Nothing. So all that money just goes straight into the county's coffers. What's good for the downtown is great for the city, but unbelievable for the county. And that's the math. I want you to realize this isn't complex stuff that I'm doing here. It's 5th grade productivity analysis. When we talk about cars, we don't talk about them on a miles per tank basis, do we? If we did, we'd all be driving Ford F-150s. Could y'all imagine if we're having coffee and I'm like, my truck gets 650 miles per tank? You'd be like, Joe, that's stupid. That's not productivity. It's miles per gallon. And the numbers just change. We should all be driving BMW Setas at 70 miles per gallon. Sorry to you Prius owners, by the way. That's more efficient. It's also incredibly dangerous. If you have a head-on with this thing, you're still You see that this is a $3 commodity that we can understand productivity. Why don't you do it for the $30,000 commodity? So we've done it all across the country. Canada, New Zealand. When you mash up all of this information that we have, for every dollar of county taxes somebody's paying to the county, their brother and sister in the city is paying about 5 times that to the same county. Here's a Walmart, here's a mall, that's a 2-story building. 3-story building, 6-story building. So I'm not talking skyscrapers. As soon as you start adding stories, you're adding taxes. And it's not a proportional growth, it's an exponential growth like a ski slope. This could be in Driggs, Idaho, Durham, North Carolina, Dallas, Texas. It's the value of your cities. So we tend to think of this as a series of layers. So like, in Quentin, in your book, you talk about the looking at the layers of information and looking at the data. You don't go to your doctor and they just say, oh, you look cool. Yeah, your doctor's going to take statistics, right? So Asheville, this is my county, 350 square miles. That's a big park. This is the Blue Ridge Parkway. This is Mount Mitchell, Mount Pisgah. No tax value. It's gray, right? So it doesn't pay taxes. I don't care about it. Y'all follow me? Green is low taxes. Purple is high taxes. We got low taxes up here. This big purple splotch is the Biltmore Estate. Y'all know the Biltmore Estate. Bill Cecil, the owner of the Biltmore estate, when he shows up at a council meeting, we all genuflect. His house is worth $100 million. He's a very important person. But it's kind of not fair. His house is 180,000 square feet. He's sitting on 2,000 acres of land. That's the biggest gas tank. Of course it's going to be worth a lot of money. So rather than total value, let's do value per acre. The map just changes. Here it is in 3D. Anybody want to take a wild guess where downtown Asheville might possibly be in this image? Boom. Right? We can also see our little sister of Black Mountain. We can see its main street popping up right there. Like this is Baby Bear, and this is Mama Bear, right? The physical form of the city is manifest in the economics. We can see where our money is. Now for my brothers and sisters who live out here in Fairview, who think they pay a lot of taxes compared to their cousins out here in Hickory Nut Gap, yeah, they do pay more, but they have no clue what we're paying in the downtown. So we have to talk about this. If you lay the millage rate, everybody's paying 6 mills in the entire county. If you put a 6 mil blanket across this whole thing, where's the county getting its money? Let's make more of that together. So our city is about 6% of the county's footprint. We're producing 41% of the county's property taxes. That's a 1 to 7 ratio of productivity. Our downtown is a shareholder of the county, barely shows up as a footprint. It's producing about 2% of the county's property taxes. That's a 1 to 31 ratio of productivity. So imagine having like 100 people in a shoe shop that you had as employees on the sales floor, and one employee is selling 31% of the shoes. How would you treat that person? Would you walk up to them and like slap them in the head and say you're not working hard enough? Of course not. This is the productivity that our downtowns yield to the county. So this is how we all can grow our wealth. So we did a project. Is this all, are we good? Sometimes I get a little off. Okay, thumbs up, good. This is Alachua County. It's fun coming to Florida. And just full disclosure, I was a zoning administrator in West Palm Beach, Florida for 5 years. I did my time inside government. It's a whole lot of fun. But it's fun to run your taxes from a North Carolina perspective. Ours is really easy. We have a market value, we have a value reduction, which is a taxable value, times the tax rate, you're done. That's your tax bill. Real simple. In Florida, you guys are a little different. So in Alachua County, the city's millage rate is 4 mills, and the county's millage rate is 8 mills. So the people inside Gainesville are paying 2 times to the county what they pay to the city. Do y'all know what your break is here? You should be aware of about how much?
It's less than 1.5. It's about 1.45.
1/2 out to the county or 1/2 to the city?
You're paying 1.5 times to the county, which you pay the city.
Okay.
But you also have your CRAs.
Okay. Well, just as the citizens of Pensacola County, or Pensacola City, you're paying 1.5 times more to the county. Yeah. So are you getting 1.5 times more service? These are questions to ask yourself. This is all about literacy here. We just need to be aware of this. So the total millage rate is 12.7 in Alachua County. Now y'all give exemptions. So right out the door, commercial gets nothing. Is the exemption? Do y'all know that?
Yeah.
Residential, haircut of $25,000 off the top, and your state legislature thought that was so wonderful. Your homesteads get a second exemption of another $25,000. So now we're down to $100,000 for taxable value of this, and this is down to $50,000. That's just giving you how your tax system works. Now here's what's crazy. I didn't realize this, but y'all get an additional $25,000 if you're a senior. It's been a while since I worked in Florida. I didn't realize y'all had a problem getting retirees down here. But, all right, here's the incentive. So now the property tax, now wiping out the senior for a second, the property tax for commercial on $100,000 of value is about 200% more than residential. So just be aware of that. Now what's crazy is y'all got really kind of nutty, and I don't know why you did this, but you adopted a perverted version of California's Prop 13. Do you know about this? So there's an annual increase, there's a cap. So as real estate starts taking off, it hits a ceiling in commercial that stops at 10%, but it can't grow more than 10%. So if the market's at 20%, it stops at 10%. Y'all follow me? Now for residential, it's down to 3% or CPI, whichever is lower, right? Do your service demands grow by CPI or 3% or whichever is lower? No. But you stifled your income to that. I was presenting this at a Florida APA conference, and I said, the city planners are all like, this is great, it keeps people in their houses. And I said, that's awesome, you're not going to get a raise more than 3% or CPI, whichever is lower. I'm like, well, no, we want better raises than that. Like, well, you've captured revenue with that. And this is like 80% or 70% of all of your land use. So as residents, we're the ones that are driving community policy. Just be aware of what the long-term effect of that is. Particularly what happened in Florida with the boom and the cratering in the recession, right? Your value gets set back down here after the recession and can only climb up to 3%. Think about that. That's what's going on with your cash flow. Anyway, past the depressing news and into some data. This is Gainesville inside Alachua County. 6% of the land area, 46% of the county's taxes, about 1-to-9 ratio, which is really strong. You can see University of Florida right here, non-taxable. The downtown is part of that, is 2% of the footprint, 4% of the value, it's a 1-to-5 ratio. The downtown is a piece of the county, doesn't even show up. It's a 2% value, it's a 1-to-40 ratio. These are all numbers you should be understanding with your community and how you stack up. It's kind of interesting with the University of Florida, and what they've done is they've grown their downtown to the universities. They've essentially doubled the width of their downtown and through CRA districts. This is the only fraternity that was kicked off campus, by the way. We told them to kick more of them off campus, they get more taxes out of them. It was kind of fun. I hope no one's part of that fraternity. We mounted the retail taxes. For Florida, look, y'all don't get a whole heck of a lot of retail taxes at a local level. To show you the scale, this is the retail stuff sitting on top of the property tax model. And this area right here is where all the malls are. This is downtown. You can see they're producing more retail taxes in downtown than what's going on out in the mall. Be literate about where your data is and what you're getting. So just to compare a couple buildings, this is a hotel that they built in the CRA district in downtown. This is a hotel next to campus. This is the footprint of this guy. This is the footprint of that guy. From a valuation standpoint, you would need 26 of these to equal to one that. Basically, you figured out 5 rooms in this hotel pay as much taxes as that thing. It's your land. It's your corporation. So I want to thank Kevin Robinson. So I don't know if you saw the article last week. He beat me to the punch and put some numbers out there. So this is your Walmart at Crichton at about $450,000 an acre of productivity. Here's your mall at about $1 million an acre of productivity. And so let's go back to the Walmart for a second. This is the Seville Tower, crushing it at about $4 million an acre. So what is that, about 8 times, 9 times the value? Check this out. This guy's crushing it at $11 million at Thiessen building. This building is shorter than that when it's more productive. Not because there's more value in there. But it makes you think. This building was built in 1901. Can you not, in 100 years, pull off another one of these buildings? Or this one. This one's just, what, across the street? $5 million, $6 million of value per acre. Check this out. These people had the wild technology of horses right there, of course. 100 years. Your great-grandparents have left you a building that is set in your portfolio providing this tremendous wealth that doesn't vaporize after 15 years. How do you build wealth for your kids and your grandkids so you can afford this community that you're in? The Cordova Mall, by the way, is actually less value per acre than this thing. The GC properties on 9th and Strong. Have y'all driven by that? You ever want to go, this is as productive as the mall? Or check this out. This is in the middle of Jordan and Davis. This is now called the LA grocery store in the middle of the neighborhood there, on the east side. This is actually almost as productive as the Walmart. Would you have thought that? So your numbers. Y'all are about $3.5 billion of value. Billion. Your county is pulling about $16 billion. So your city is about 3% of the county's footprint. It's about 22% of the county's land area. That's a 1-to-7 ratio of productivity for your city to your county. Drill into the other numbers. Let's see what's going on in your downtown. It's kind of interesting that your city is actually growing at a higher rate than what your county is from a valuation perspective. And these are some handy-dandy little charts that Chris Jones puts up, so you can follow the numbers right there. So if you're not measuring this stuff, you can't manage it. If you don't use numbers, and this is great to see all the data that you're putting out, keep this going. Put more numbers out there. You find crazy stuff. I'm just going to tell you right now, don't believe your eyes and what you think is going on until you run the numbers and actually have information. This is West Palm Beach, Florida. You can see downtown West Palm Beach killing the town of Palm Beach. But you see things like this. This is in downtown West Palm. This building is 2 blocks away from this building. This is actually more productive at 10.5 million an acre versus 9.2 million an acre. Who would have thought a 3-story building is more productive? You. You're an overachiever. Yeah. So we grabbed all of Donald Trump's real estate for the heck of it. So the Donald's pulling about $400,000 of value per acre from Mar-a-Lago, his golf course, and those towers. So the Donald is actually less productive than one of the poorest neighborhoods in downtown. Who would have thought that shotgun shacks are actually at $600,000 of value per acre? 3 of these are actually condemned. You see the condemned signs on them. And they're actually more productive than he is. Don't hate the player, hate the game. Understand the game, and it's your community. I don't fault how people take advantage of this stuff, but it's your corporation. So this is another one. This is Redlands, California. We asked people, we're like, what's that thing? That big spike right there in downtown. And they said, it's got to be the skyscraper downtown. We're like, no, it's actually this thing. A 2-story building is actually more productive. So this thing, this little thing, shoe shop, scabbed onto the side of this building. If you had 3 acres of that, it would equal a 13-acre Walmart. They did a mall downtown as part of their urban renewal, so we went ahead and just erased the urban renewal. We went back and pulled their Sanborn maps and recreated everything that they tore down in their haste to be modern. So here's their mall right now at about $6 million of value per acre, or total value. This is what they threw away. Think about the communities you've visited or you've come from or you've seen where we've done this to our downtowns. We've essentially threw away $15 million of wealth that our grandparents left for us as a gift because we weren't thinking about the economics. We were too rich after World War II ended that we just started doing crazy stuff. You heard Chuck talk about this in his Strongtown speech. So if we want to make America great again, we have plans. We know how we did it. Just do it again. So retail sales, by the way, this is Colorado, Durango, Colorado. In Colorado, we can get retail data better than you can in Florida. But by the way, getting retail data in North Carolina is illegal. So at least count your blessings. You can get it at a zip code level. But here's downtown, here's the mall, Home Depot, Walmart is all down here. This is the property taxes, here's the retail taxes. This is for a community of 26,000 people in the middle of nowhere. Here's total productivity, jobs. In every category, downtown was cleaning their clock. What was fun is we actually had a couple businesses that shared their books. This is a Tim Callahan and Peter Schertz, a coffee shop and a bookstore. This is the footprint difference. Here's the county property taxes per acre. This is what the county gets in property taxes from the Walmart per acre versus these 2 small businesses. Would you have thought those 2 small businesses were that much more productive in property taxes? What about retail sales? Would you think that a bookstore and a coffee shop are 5 times the potency of a Walmart? That's the data. And jobs. So as you continue this experiment of growing your community and investing in entrepreneurs, think about where that investment goes and the yield on that investment. There's data, right? Now there's a second layer of information. On which side of this ledger, who's hiring the local attorney, the local accountant, the local ad executive? Here or here? The right side. Who's paying their employees more per hour, even though they're still all retail services? The right side or the left side? Right side. Now let's ask the next question, the social question, the fabric of your community. Who's on the planning commission as a volunteer? Who's helping out at a Little League game? Who's helping out at the United Way blood drive, the right side or the left side? Yeah. Know your numbers, know your data, do the math on this stuff. Now sometimes people are like, Joe, look, you just don't understand. This is America. We got lots of land. I don't want to live near anybody. All right? What if I could build you a county that, as the Ghost of Christmas Future did, 100% sprawl in the entire county? The county's called Gwinnett County. Y'all know Gwinnett? Lawrenceville's the county seat. I'd never heard of Lawrenceville when I went there. I was under strict orders when I was come to town. I was not allowed to say 4 words. These are dirty in Gwinnett County. I'm not allowed to say the word urban, city, town, or municipal. My client told me, she goes, look, Joe, we're rural. We're not part of the city. This is inflammatory language if you use that word, these words in our meeting. I'm like, all right, well, it's kind of hard when your company's called Urban3. So they told me they're rural. They're outside the Beltway of Atlanta. Here's Gwinnett County. There's Lawrenceville. Now, what's crazy is there are 812,000 people in Gwinnett County. So I called up my client. I was like, Kelly, y'all are 812,000 people. She goes, yeah, I know, honey, but we're 460 square miles. We're huge. I don't know what that means, but I can do some math, right? You divide the population into the area. That's 1,900 people per square mile, right? That's their density, which is less dense than DeKalb. But just for the sake of it, I was having the community meeting with the folks, and I said, let me just put some data up here for you. So y'all are 200 people denser than Mecklenburg County, North Carolina. What's in Mecklenburg County? Charlotte. I never heard of Lawrenceville. How the hell did you get denser by 200 people and you didn't create a Charlotte? This is Nashville. You're 600 people denser than them. Both these places have a professional football team. There's no such thing as the Gwinnett County Cowboys. Like, what's up with that? This is Austin, Texas. You're double the density. Raleigh, Asheville, Chapel, North Carolina. This is what rural looks like. I don't know what the heck that is. When we did their model, I was like, what the heck? It's just all that yellow. So Josh McCarty did the analysis. I was like, turn it on its side. So it looks like a 1970s shag carpet. The same thing. That's the most potent building in the whole entire community. This is what we typically see. This is Orange County, North Carolina. I can see 3 different municipalities, and I can see Main Street, Main Street, Main Street, some new urbanism over here. The data shows me what's going on. How the hell did you do this? I mean, I was blown away. I'm like, as a planner, I don't understand how you did this. This is the most potent building in the entire county of 812,000 people your great-grandparents left you. That's potency. So this is it. All of these places are less dense, producing more wealth. So just to kind of rub it in, we made an economic heart monitor and put the 3 counties at the same scale. So Nashville, Davidson County, Austin, Travis County, Lawrenceville, and Gwinnett County. We kind of pulsed them out. We're like, all right, here we go. Yeah. So we got a peak value of 192 million here, 476 in Austin. Y'all are flatlining at 8. Good luck with that. And they told, I said to them, I'm like, look, you have all the same horizontal infrastructure as this place, but none of the vertical stuff to pay for this. Are you guys going broke yet? And they're like, oh yeah, we're broke. If you don't have the money for the Greenway, the art teacher, or the dancing traffic cop, y'all got dancing traffic cops yet? If you don't have that money, it's because you've invested it somewhere else. So, South Bend, Indiana, I'm getting close to my time here. Let me kind of show you something. This is South Bend. This is their population growth since the 1860s. Their apex year was 1963. Their population dropped. They kind of flatlined in population because they lost manufacturing. This is their pipes on the right over here, growing a community, adding pipes. I'll drop a boundary when their population stops. Do y'all see a problem? Not adding people, you're adding infrastructure. So the population growth, this is their pipe growth indexed against their population growth. They're not adding more people, but they're adding more stuff. These people can't afford that much stuff. I asked them, I'm like, were your grandparents in 1930, were they camels? They could live with so much less water than you guys? I mean, your guys are pigs. They have enough pipe to go from South Bend, Indiana to my office in Asheville. That's a lot of pipe. How much pipe do y'all have? This is all measurable stuff, folks. It's hiding in plain sight. You just have to ask the question and put it on a map. So let me kind of flip ahead here. This is Peoria, Illinois. Actually, you know what? Let me go back. The reason why our models look the way that they do is real simple. It's how your tax system works. So when you have buildings and parking, by the way, we put a Caterpillar there because they make Caterpillars in Peoria, so we had to make it relevant for them. But buildings and parking, this is how the assessor goes out and puts price tags on stuff, right? This is the per square foot value of buildings and parking. The road doesn't care. The road cost you $9 a linear foot, right? Did y'all get that? That's called a subsidy. Do y'all think of it that way? This has a consistent cost. This has a discount at 30 times what that is. So how we use our land, baked into the tax system, we have baked in a subsidy to parking. We tend to think of a subsidy that I come downtown, we have a meeting at City Hall, you guys give me a density bonus, half of you yell at me that I'm some sort of rapacious developer. That is indeed a subsidy. It's a conscious subsidy. This is a subsidy baked in policy. So when we do the models, the reason why they all drop out around downtown is because there's mostly parking all around it, choking the downtown. When you go out to the burbs, the reason why they're so flat is they're mostly parking. It's real simple. So we took the whole entire county and did this model. This is all of Peoria County. If you put all the buildings side by side, that's the footprint you need for an entire county's worth of buildings. Now, you don't want to be so close to each other, you want to stretch out a little bit. This is how much they have for parking. And then this is their liability. So when you look at the numbers, they actually have more land dedicated to parking than buildings. This is their liability. This is everything else, berms, buffers, backyards. And when you look at the numbers, let's put it on a per square mile basis. When you look at the numbers of their cash flow, they have an expense of about $250 million a mile for this stuff. And this is all they get from the parking lots, and that's what they get from the buildings. So as you make choices in your community, and you think you want to fund things like a better education system, an early education program for pre-kindergartners, and you're looking for that money, look at where you're wasting the money and make that choice. Do you all want to have better education, a better high school graduation rate, or do you need more asphalt? Let's put them on the same page together, because you have to pay to fix that stuff. They have enough roads to go from Peoria to Vancouver. How much roads do you all have? So speaking of roads, and I'll close with this last example. We did this project in Lafayette, Louisiana together with Chuck Marone from Strong Towns. You all saw Chuck. He presented some of this stuff. When we went to Lafayette, it was kind of fascinating. Joey Durrell is the mayor. He's like, we're broke. You need to show people how broke we are. When we dug into their books, and I'm not making this up, this is the cover of their county's budget document. They call the county's parishes down there. This is the cover of the budget document from 1994. This is the government that's about to get hit by a tsunami and eaten by a shark. Do you think the finance officer was sending a message to the elected officials? Now, what do you think the elected officials did with this information? Kicked the can down the road. The next year, the finance officer, to her credit, she was like, hey, did I mention how screwed we are? The third year, they did this joint city-county government because the citizens of the city couldn't see the parish go down in flames. They had to join it together. So I'm there 20 years later with Chuck, and I'm like, what did you do in the last 20 years to solve the problem? Because you're bankrupt again. How did you change your behavior? If I'm having heart attacks because I'm eating cheeseburgers and I have that 7 bypass heart surgery, if I keep on eating cheeseburgers, I'm going to have right in the back, same back place, right? So here's their tax model. This is their downtown. This is some new urbanism stuff, and they spread out into the swamps. Just taking the pavement, all that pavement that they own, it's basically a parking lot that's the size of 12 times the French Quarter. Like, you own that, you get to repave that every 40 years. That's what you own. One of the public officials responded to my presentation by saying this, it's not where you live, it's what you believe. What does that even mean? What's funny is, now they're Cajuns, they're really funny people. And Kevin Blanchard, the public works director, responded to this statement by saying this, there's no such thing as an infrastructure fairy, so we had to Photoshop Kevin in on that one. And he's like, could you show people the math on this? We're like, fine. Here's the problem, folks. Every municipality in this entire country, if you follow the CAFR standards, they list roads as assets. As a developer, I build a road and give it to you. It goes into your books as an asset. So you have income, expenses, and assets. In my business, a computer is an asset. At home, my car, and my house is an asset. So we sat with the finance officer. We're like, could you pick your roads up and can you sell them in Baton Rouge? And she goes, well, no. And Chuck goes, that's a liability. I said, well, no. Or she goes, well, but our CAFR standards. I'm like, we're not going to follow your CAFR standards. No one's going to show up from Chicago and give us a demerit if we model you how you actually cash flow. So this is how they're cash flowing. In 1960, when the developer gave you the road, that road becomes a liability in 2010, right here. That's the cost of that road from 1960. You stop taking on roads in 2009. Here we are in 2016. This is the debt load of all of the roads that you have. That's what you need to have as a reserve account. So when we fix a building and put an air conditioner on the top of it, I know that air conditioner is going to last me 15 years. It cost me $10,000. So I take a little piece of rent from y'all and squirrel it into an account. I just can't reach in my pocket 10 years from now and pull out $20,000. You know? So this is what your cost of your roads, this is the actual revenue that they have up here. Let me ask you a complex municipal finance question. Do you all see a problem yet? So here's how it's going to cash flow going forward. If you're already feeling pain, it's not going to get better. Let me make it easier for you. Do you have enough revenue to pay for your expenses? You have enough revenue to pay for expenses. So your liability is 18 times your income. Now here's the scary part. What did they do? They went out to start getting bonds. We got bonds. Well, that's like going to get a credit card. Lower interest rate, but you still owe the bonding company money. So they come into the revenue and skim half of it off the top right there. So they only have $25 million for that $1 billion of liability. So we programmed into the model We sent everybody a bill for their community. We don't care where you're doing, what you live, we're just going to send you a bill. So this is the whole city floating, or the county floating in the bay, and everybody's bill we sent to them in red. Green is the money that they put in. So if you live out here, this is what you're actually paying in taxes, that's the cost to the region, right there. In red, net one and the other, what's net positive, net negative. Here's the whole thing in 3D. Take this thing and slap it on the floor, this is what it looks like. If you're colorblind, this is what it looks like. I know that like, probably at least 4 of you are colorblind in here. That's net negative, this is net positive. Net negative, net positive. They told me, like, well, Joe, people really want to live out here. And I'm like, yeah, that's what it costs you to service them. Or in other words, that's what you're paying people to move out there because they're not covering their own, right? So, real simply, in 1950, they had 34,000 people, 5 feet of pipe per person, 2.4 fire hydrants per thousand. They grew their population to 121,000. They grew their feet of pipe per person to this, and their fire hydrants per thousand to that. A 350% growth in population, 1,000 and 2,000% growth in liability. They told us they got rich, so we measured that too. Their household income went from 27,000, 28,000, adjusted for today's dollars, to 45,000. That's a 160% growth in revenue. So 160% growth in revenue, 1,000 and 2,000% growth in liability. Does that make any sense? Y'all know what your numbers are? So this is a paradigm. This is what we're all trapped in. And we have to look at the numbers to understand this stuff. Let me just flash forward on this one. We're over time. It's going to close. Sorry. Your nerdy charts. So what I try to tell people is there's suburban bias baked into the system of how we run our cities. And I just want you to acknowledge it and understand it. You know, George Bush said this. I kind of miss him now, but America's addicted to oil. We're not addicted to oil. We're addicted to a pattern. You know, it's all right. It feels good. You know, it's like it would be great if I were 6 foot tall and had a full head of hair. I think you should pay for that. That would make me happy. This is how we've made our decisions in the last 50 years. This doesn't make any sense. And it's not me that brought this up. It's actually this guy. In 1973, the Nixon administration published this document, The Cost of Sprawl. Did you know that? The first gas crisis, the Nixon administration was trying to drive the point home that this stuff costs us more than they were bringing in. So, like your accountant doesn't care if you buy a boat, right? As long as you can afford the boat. If you can't, your accountant's going to say something. We want you to put these numbers on a map and understand that and make decisions for your community. And I'll make it real simple. I don't use a lot of words in my presentation, but if you buy more stuff, it costs you more to maintain. It's that simple. So there's a great business book that I recommend to a lot of audiences, Jim Collins' Good to Great, and you're doing this with your analysis, which is when you look at businesses, you need to know the data. Why did Walgreens take off? And anybody see an Eckerd in a while? They both started in the same spot in 1980. Why did one succeed and one disappear? It's because one faced the difficult facts. You have to confront the facts or they're going to confront you. So do your math. Thanks. Apologize for going over on that one.
No, you're perfect. So every time we do one of these, we say that there's no way that he can be better than the one before. And then we sit there and Quinn's nudging me saying, I think he's even better than the one before.
I won in 98.
I think he was fantastic. Let's give him another round. As you pointed out in many of your slides, our Florida tax system is a little bit loopy. What are some alternatives out there?
Well, there's lots of different alternatives. You know, a lot of, I guess, what I'm trying to do with this talk is provide a nudge. You know, get you to realize that you actually have more control of this than you may think. A lot of people tell me, they're like, oh, we can't change the tax system. It's either federal or state or whatever. But there are different paradigms that are out there. In the 1800s, do y'all know Henry George's taxation? Anyone? Ever hear of land value taxation? Henry George was a tax economist in the late 1800s. And you think about what was going on the eastern seaboard when like a flood of Europeans were coming over and taking over all of these cities. all of a sudden you get tenements and overcrowding and all this stuff. Well, some people could just sit on the land and not do anything with it. So Henry George came up with the idea that you all, everybody in the community has to pay for all of that infrastructure, but because if you tax on value, somebody could just sit on that land and speculate. You probably see this all around downtown here, that there's all this effort going on and somebody's just sitting on real estate doing nothing. And if you do nothing, you're taxed on nothing, right? And Henry George was like, there should be at least a minimum value based on location, and we should worry less about the actual building. So there's an incentive for people to build more valuable architecture. It spurred a movement called Georgism. Everybody got excited. There was a whole movement. Elizabeth Maggie Phillips was a Georgist. She's got wonderful eyebrows. And she realized that you can't talk to adults about changing tax system because adults think it's too difficult. So she worked with children. She invented a board game. Recognize it?
Monopoly.
Monopoly. What's the lessons of Monopoly? Land assembly, location, and put some buildings on it. That's how you win the game. So if you could think like Elizabeth or Henry George and think about the locational cost that you all have to bear for that vacated real estate in your community, the cost of the pipe, the garbage truck, the police officer, all of that stuff. And just make sure you're accounting for it and seeing what you're losing. Come up with an impact fee or some other form of recouping that value. But there's got to be a way to you got to think about the equalization of all of that stuff. Canadians, by the way, do something very similar to this. Australians dial up the land value as part of the component of your value. So if you pull your tax bill, you'll see your building's value is like this much of your tax bill, and your land value is like that much. In Australia, they flip it. These are all things you can do locally.
As you consult with cities across the country, is there a particular formula you advise that they use when making fiscal development decisions?
Yeah, I kind of put my head here. This is one of the examples that we did in Chattanooga. This is their downtown. Here's across the river. Somebody came in with a Publix grocery store and a surface parking lot. And the mayor's like, let's get rid of all of our urban design guidelines because I got this fellow from Atlanta that wants this grocery store. So here's the site. They've got mixed-use buildings down the street. They've got a grocery store that a local guy did called Green Life. Whole Foods ended up buying that, and you have townhouses. So we have the ingredients of urbanism around here. So we know what a Publix looks like, right? Conventional Publix. This is residential above retail, office above retail. Here's the Green Life grocery store. It's got like yoga studios and retail, but the grocery store is back here. Publix has done high density stuff. This is parking on top of the grocery store with a conveyor belt. This looks like a UFO hit it, but it's a conveyor belt. This is a hybrid model Publix in West Palm Beach with a pedestrian front and a parking lot. So here's the site. So this is what the developer's offering. Grocery store, a parking lot. And we made a 3D model, and it's kind of crude, but we wanted people to see that the housing has to look at a tarmac of a roof, and then you get this quarter-mile long future graffiti wall. What I find with communities is, one is they look at a plan and they're like, oh, it's a plan. But do you really understand what the effect is when you see it? So how do you visualize it so people can really see it? So even a crude SketchUp model like this, but we're also running the taxes, city taxes and county taxes. So when you're in your planning board meeting, you should be aware of what your options are, or planning board and commission. That when you're making a decision, you're actually interacting with the deal. So they're asking to remove some zoning code, right? If you remove that, you're actually giving away money. So, okay, this is what your zoning code would require as a minimum. Housing, facing housing, right? Mixed-use buildings in the corner, do your grocery store. So this is what you get. This is if you do a better site design. This is option with the Green Life model. And then a different kind of design around the outside. Different numbers, but we'll come back to that. Here's what you get. You got 34 foot of grade change. Just go crazy, do Miami Beach. Just drive right up on the roof. Densify the heck out of it. This is super high density. Back it down to West Palm Beach. Big parking lot in the center. Housing, crust of mixed use here. And let's say the developer gets upset, goes back to Atlanta, you don't get a grocery store, you get townhouses and mixed use buildings. So when developers do a project, we call it opportunity cost modeling. When I look at a piece of land, I'm doing 5 or 6 different designs and I'm running numbers on it. What works? Well, you should be doing the same thing if you're cooperating into the development, right? If you're giving away some of your rules, what's it cost you? So here's what the site currently pays in taxes, here's what the developer is proposing. So indeed, you're getting 3 times the taxes, that's true. Here's if you just follow your zoning code. That's your taxes. Here's if you do Green Life, Miami Beach, West Palm Beach, and your no-build scenario. So these are all the choices that you're actually making when you make this decision. Do you run these numbers? Let's just take 2 of these, the Green Life model and what they're proposing. So here's the physical difference, here's the financial difference, and check out the county. Like the county could just throw in $100,000 a year and they'll still make $30,000 more than what they're getting, or $20,000 more. Did y'all see that? So really, actually these are the wrong numbers because that's just the annual decision. You're actually stuck with it for 20 years. 20 years you're going to be living without that revenue. So this isn't the real numbers. You got to net these forward 20 years. This is what we're talking about. So when you all make decisions and I come in and you allow me to underbuild in your community without measuring the infrastructure, are you running those numbers or do you see what the opportunity cost is? Because right there at the council meeting, you could throw $2 million at the developer and just say, you know, it's really hard for you to like learn how to work with a townhouse builder. Here's $2 million. If you just throw away $2 million, you're still making $2.2 million more than what they're offering. How many of these decisions for the last 2 decades have you all lived through without running the numbers on this stuff? So one of the things we always recommend, this is a very basic economic modeling analysis, but really it's just a bar chart. How do you get it so that people can see this stuff? That's a long answer, I know.
No, it's perfect.
Okay.
Good follow here. Is there a community that is doing it in terms of analyzing land uses and encouraging more lucrative forms?
There's numerous communities in Auckland. Well, one is I have to say this, and you probably saw me flip through the slide real quick. We're a country that was formed on a tax revolt, right? We had the Tea Party, we didn't like the taxes, and we poked mom in the eye and went walking away. Well, our cousins, all these other Commonwealth places, started with the same tax system we did. They've advanced theirs well beyond where ours is. And they think differently about their cities. It's really kind of fascinating how illiterate we are about, A, our own taxation, but also our relatives. But in New Zealand, we showed them a model that we're doing in Asheville. There's this highway project called I-26 coming through town, and we're trying to get a better footprint in our community to reduce the footprint down by about 100 acres, because that 100 acres in our tax base will yield us $110 million of city, county, and school taxes in 50 years, which is a big deal. And so I showed that to people in Auckland. 2 months after we showed them the model, they called us up and they're like, we've got a highway we're going to try this on. And so we ran the numbers, and they would net about $160 million of new taxes if they just put this area on a road diet and harvested the real estate. 3 months after we ran the numbers, they're like, great, we're going to do the second project. And we're like, wait, you already started? And they're like, oh yeah, we're turning the highway down, we're done. This was in the span of like 1 year. How long do we let our conversations with our cities go on? You know, in Asheville, we've been talking about it since 1989. It's insane. And these are our own corporations. We're basically shooting ourselves in the foot, allowing what? Tallahassee to show up and just run their standards down your throat so that you can have people run through your community instead of building a nest here. You're essentially giving away your value. So that whole paradigm needs to shift, and we need to hold ourselves accountable to the speed on that one.
What are some of the specific zoning and development rules that need to change to help facilitate more fiscally sound development?
There's lots of them. I think a lot of it is having a conscious understanding of the tax system and what you get out of it. Setting a model for getting longevity or putting value in your community, but also understanding what you're giving away in the process. What was the third part of that question? Sorry.
Help facilitating more fiscally sound development.
Okay. Yeah, there's some communities, and it depends on the community. In Asheville, we have a 2-story minimum in our downtown. You can't come in and build less than 2 stories. Now that works in certain areas, so I'm not going to say make that whole cloth run your community, but there should be areas where you want to see them grow up, and you should have a minimum standard in those locations. In Asheville, we don't have any parking requirements at all in our downtown. 0. Haven't had that since the 80s. But on the flip side, our city had a much more proactive standard of doing parking. So their parking decks in Asheville They're 25-year bonds that they're doing on these projects. They're paying them off in year 8. The city actually calls them cash cows because from year 8 to 25, it's straight gravy. So, but we have the density to handle that. But it's very much a public-private kind of conversation. It's not just foisting it on the developer like you paid for the parking. If the developer does that, the developer is going to put a private sign at that door. So when that person leaves the unit and goes somewhere, that space sits vacant. One of the standards I like to throw at people, a typical parking space is about 250 square foot of space. And I'll tell people, I'm like, go measure your office and tell me if your office is 250 square feet. That could be your assignment tomorrow. I can guarantee you that most of you have more land dedicated to your car sitting in the parking lot than you in your office. And this is what we have to understand about the dynamics of cities.
In our community, we utilize local option income tax. And recently we have begun to spend some of that money before it is even earned, counting on the fact that it'll be there down the road. Have you seen other communities do that, and what could possibly be the danger of that?
Well, it depends. I mean, that's kind of a hard question to ask me because I don't know the actual dynamics of the deal. If we're something like this, if this were part of the local option sales tax to pay in to make something like that happen, yeah, that's a good return on investment because eventually that's going to balloon up to a higher payment. I'm heading to Leander, Texas tomorrow, where they're considering a TIF, or they call them TIRs in Texas, but a tax increment roll into a development project. I think it's going to end up being a value somewhere around $800 million when it's all done around a train station. And they're using their tax increment investment to pay for all of the streets around it. So for essentially 25 years, it's paying half of its taxes, then you get this huge balloon payment after 25 years. So long as that architecture is actually worth something after 25 years, you're going to see this huge balloon payment. Does that make sense? So they're investing their money into the infrastructure, so it's paid off ahead of time with this reciprocal payment at the back end.
What are some projects that it wouldn't make sense to do that for?
I've seen people use tax increment finance on Walmarts in Iowa, which is unbelievably dumb because it's not only is it not paying you any taxes, it's not going to be worth anything when that tax increment is over in 15 years. So that's just not thinking it through.
How do you incentivize people to invest in downtown if it's going to cost developers more to build there? Are there legal processes that can prevent sprawl and promote infill downtown?
I think one of the things we need to think about is what do you make easy? What do you make it easy to do? Is it? I have community after community. Like in Asheville, we can go to the edges of the community. I can just go to the highway business zoning and just drop in a box. Nobody shows up and yells at me. I get sailed right through the planning commission, no problem. But if I try to do something downtown, people are going to come and harass me, call me an evil developer. Part of the reason why I show that picture of Asheville with the horses on the street is because in Asheville we have a problem where people treat downtown like a curatorial museum. Like, there it is, don't change a damn thing. So what I do at those meetings was, and these are some of my friends that are historic preservationists, I go back to that picture from the 1800s and show the wooden buildings. And I'm like, you guys aren't preservationists enough. Let's get rid of these nasty brick and stone buildings. Let's go back to the wooden ones. That's the original Asheville. Like, we've allowed our conversation, now I think it's a design problem. I think that Asheville needs to add buildings of value. It used to be commonplace where we could tear a building down and put something that was better in its place. So there is some truth to that architecturally, we all have to acknowledge, including a lot of my architect friends in this room, we have to acknowledge that we've lost a history of practicing urbanism. And that's what makes people hate us as designers. And there are rules to how an urban environment needs to behave. So I think that it's a community conversation that needs to happen. And this is Charleston. You can see downtown Charleston here. We told them, like, God made the ocean, so we're going to go wipe that out. But we pulled all of the buildings that predate the Declaration of Independence. Charleston's an old place. So buildings like this, built in 1686. So clearly a revolutionary right here. Here they are. So in plan, that's all the buildings that are older than the United States in blue. So they've got 21 acres of that produced $600,000 in county taxes in 2015. Out in the county, we've got this Walmart that's 21 acres. The same year, that's all the county got out of it. So if this is more difficult to do, yet you yield more money, why would you make it more difficult? You know, it's like, why would you have fire codes and all of this stuff? I mean, if anybody's visited Charleston where people dying in the streets of mass hysteria and fire and all of this stuff, where there are not enough cars in the downtown of Charleston. So we created all of these rules that actually make it more difficult to do the urban stuff that actually builds us wealth. We've got highway standards, road standards, all of this stuff that don't yield. And so I think I'm not giving you a straight answer because I think it's more, you need to start going into it with a different mindset of what are we trying to achieve and how do we make the good stuff easy to get, and how do we compensate for the losses we're taking on the bad stuff. You know, does that make sense? Go ahead and do a cheap building, a cheap throwaway building, knock yourself out. But we have to at least charge you the cost of all the road there.
So before your presentation, I wrote that half of our county is rural. I'm afraid to say that now because you'll probably pull out a slide here that tells me that I'm totally wrong and that it's only like a third. But anyway, that said, half of our county is rural, maybe, and not everyone is able to live downtown or wants to live downtown. How should cities balance development between downtown and more rural areas?
Well, first of all, we have to question what rural is. You know, if somebody in this audience sent that question, my first question to you is, if you're rural, do you farm? Are you a logger? You know, are you out like catching armadillos in the swamps or something? Like, if you're not doing that, then you're not really rural. You're just habitating in a rural environment, but you're practicing in an urban world. So if you're still coming into downtown, or if you're still driving into the city, you are an urbanite, regardless of what you want to tell yourselves. I can tell you I look like Brad Pitt. Sooner or later, I'm going to walk by a mirror and get faced with data, right? So I think we need to really own the language that we use and be honest with what it means. And just realize, I don't care that my brothers and sisters live out in the county and that they have these really nice farmhouses and all of this stuff out there, so long as they're farmers. But once I have to pay for their lifestyle at my detriment, then we need to have a conversation about what that exchange is. And I'm cool with giving money. You know, if y'all want to have fun, go to an International Downtown Association conference where the people that actually manage downtowns have these conversations. They all know that they're the golden geese. And they're perfectly fine with exporting money out in the suburban environment, so long as there's a conscious discussion of the gift, and then we can all afford it. But some money has to go back into the goose, otherwise you kill it. Asheville is going through this right now, where somehow we want to make pate. You know, let's just kill the goose now, because the goose is too good. So no more hotels. Hotels aren't allowed in Asheville anymore, even though we've been a tourism town since Thomas Wolfe said decades before the Civil War. I don't know if you realize that the Civil War was a long time ago. And yet now the Asheville residents, who mostly were tourists before they came to town, now don't want tourists. So be mindful of the conversation, be honest about the language you use, and I would just challenge you that if you truly are rural, then great, we can support you. But don't live in a suburban pattern that none of us can afford, including you, and don't expect other people to cover your losses. Does that make sense?
Yes. I'm actually going to move up a question here because I think it plays well into this. Without giving you a really lengthy background, the county attracted a business to the outskirts of our county that's growing rapidly, and the area is expected to explode in terms of population, upwards of about 30,000 residents. At the same time, Escambia has come into possession of 640 acres in that area. How would you develop that land to support and grow a community that size? What do we need to consider as we develop that area?
So how many jobs are there?
10,000, I believe, is the
10,000
expectation that they'll
jobs
have in that particular business.
That's just one business, 10,000 jobs. That's not
And
rural.
it's
Is that a pretty big logging
No,
company?
that's not rural. That's not rural. I don't think we're counting that as rural.
Well, here's the thing. So, okay, y'all are, I'm assuming that everybody in here is an Escambia County residents. This is all your corporation and your corporate leaders making a decision about those 10,000 jobs. So here's a question. Where do those 10,000 jobs live? Where do they go to lunch? Are they able to grab a beer afterwards or go to dinner and conduct business? What's the economic spin of that stuff, or is it an isolated bubble that doesn't give any gift back to the county? And if it's not giving that gift, how do you add that in? So can somebody walk home from work? I know the answer is probably no, but just these are the questions to ask yourself is, what have we not learned from this side of the ledger and how to build wealth versus that side of the ledger? So make sure that you're running those numbers and say, how can we minimize our infrastructure investment in those 10,000 jobs? If we just scatter people into the wind, then you have to pick up that rope that connects them home, which is all the infrastructure and expense. You know, if they can't walk to a lunch spot, other than the cafeteria that's in there, you're not getting that entrepreneurial spin. Somebody can't start a business nearby. You know, somebody doesn't have an opportunity to build onto that campus and grow the community together. You're in a corporate environment, a shared corporation. How are you sharing in the wealth with everybody, or is it just all funneling into one person's pocket? You know, it's like we do our development in downtown Asheville in kind of pockets, and then the dots connect between that. Those are other people putting their sweat and love into our community, which rises the tide of all boats. And you're in it together.
We've seen in your presentation and earlier presentations from Chuck when he was here earlier that the older, less glamorous, sometimes run-down communities tend to bring the most tax value to cities.
Yep.
Yet it appears they tend to receive the least in terms of sidewalks, road repair, parks, proper lighting. I assume this isn't a problem unique to Pensacola. Have you seen communities combat this problem successfully so that these neighborhoods are not left behind?
Awareness, information, education, conversation, dialogue. You all saw the LA grocery store in the East Side neighborhood versus the Walmart. How did you feel about that? Did that remove a bias for you? Did you know that information coming into this tonight? Chances are you didn't. Hopefully I hit upon a bias that we assumed that poor neighborhood wasn't producing wealth, but it is. So now that you know that, now that you have that information, what choices are you going to do with your public investment? Are you going to remove other biases that you bring to the table? So this is all about having this community conversation. This is the great thing about this lecture series, is hopefully it's our job as speakers to shake up the information a little bit. And don't take my word for it. Go out and do those same measurements yourself. So that's the thing, is that every community has these perceived biases. When I showed the Donald Trump thing to the people in Palm Beach, it was really funny. The commissioners were like, well, that's not right. I'm like, exactly. And it's like, but do the math yourself. Don't trust me. You know, it's not hard.
All right, last question. We have a huge influx of cash coming into our communities over the next 10 years with the BP oil money that we talked about earlier. Before CivicCon, our concern was how do we spend that money wisely? Now that we're more educated, the question is how can we ensure that that gift doesn't end up costing us long-term down the road? Are there safeguards we should have in place to protect us and point us toward better long-term solutions?
Yeah, run the math. You know, do the math on how long, like what's going to be if you're going to invest that into the community, how does that investment come back to the community? Can we use it as like in the case of the Green Life model, could we use that, or the Chattanooga model, could you use that as an investment to harvest more wealth into the future? Can you make strategic investments that add value to adjacent real estate? So one of the things people ask me all the time, they're like, Joe, you just don't like parks, man. You know, and it's like if you actually look at our models, what we see in the Gainesville model is a perfect example of it. The University of Florida has zero value to the community from a taxable standpoint. But it's like the ocean. Actually, let's go back to the ocean. So the ocean has no value. But what it does is it slides all the value to the beach, right? So if you can make investments that may be losses, it may be a public facility or something, but if you're doing it with the conscious act of we are going to make more value for everything on the private sector side. So it's going to rise in value, and we're going to harvest all of that new wealth. And that's all thinking through how do you leverage your investment. You know, and any business owner or entrepreneur is thinking about how can I leverage my investment. Just take that at the macro scale for your community. And don't just throw Hail Mary passes of I think this is going to work, or if we just hope it's going to happen. Don't do the silver bullet approach. Run the numbers, talk openly, make a bar chart. It doesn't have to be complicated math, and please don't accept somebody just walks in and throws spreadsheets at you and lets you try to figure it out. It has to communicate to everybody in the audience. So you just sat through, anyone want to guess how many slides I just showed? Anyone? 260. But the slides are designed to convey information, graphically convey it because we all can understand a map and a picture. So do that. Expect that out of the information that comes to you at commission, at the city councils, wherever, to understand all of this stuff because it has to communicate to the lay public. Y'all don't have time to read documents that are that thick. Show me the return. And you should expect a return on those investments. Just because it's a gift doesn't mean you should blow it. So.
All right, thank you. Please join me in giving He wants a 10, so everyone please remember to fill out those surveys. They are really important to help us understand what other topics you might want, how you enjoyed tonight, so we know who to bring in the future. Have a fantastic evening.